Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities such as new companies and potential business partners and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDnet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com. Hello everyone, welcome to Grid Live Wrap-Up. Joe Sanriego here, along with Ben Schneider, Kobe Lambus from the Podium Finish, and Matthew Bro. Before we get started in the NASCAR action today, definitely want to talk about essentially Coy Gibbs. After the introduction of the Championship 4 drivers today, the tragic news was made official. Coy Gibbs, son of Joe Gibbs, and father of Ty Gibbs, passed away in his sleep overnight. Ty Gibbs didn't race today due to the tragic news and being with his family. Daniel Hemrick took over the 23 Toyota today, and just overall a tragic ordeal, especially for the range of emotions for Ty Gibbs and Joe Gibbs to go from celebrating a championship with 3 generations of family member there, now a son and a father grieving the loss less than a day after winning that championship together. Our condolences to Ty, Joe Gibbs, the Gibbs family, and the entire Gibbs racing organization and everyone involved. It was just hard, heavy news. We're also processing. We're thinking about everyone as well. And with that sad news, still there was a race that went on, and we still have a championship to discuss about as well.
Yeah, as they say, the show must go on, and the race went on, and there was more of a somber atmosphere in the garage area after the tragic passing of Coy Gibbs. JGR Racing with that heavy heart. The racing action on the track saw Joey Logano dominate the entire race with a strong car from the first stage, second stage, all the way to the checker flag in the Bill France Cup. Logano won Las Vegas in the round of 8 and said the team spent the last 2 weeks preparing for Phoenix. And starting with you, Ben, was extra time to prepare the main advantage the 22 team had over the rest of the Championship 4?
Well, Kobe, before I answer that, I want to echo everything Joe said. I can't imagine what the Gibbs family is going through this afternoon, and I want to extend my deepest thoughts, prayers, and condolences to the entire Gibbs family, the entire Joe Gibbs Racing organization. I also want this to be a reminder to everybody watching this, everybody that is involved with the sport, never take life for granted. Tomorrow is never promised for any of us. And, it's a very eerie feeling this afternoon, like I mentioned, to see that photo of Coy and Ty from just last night, and to know Coy only had hours left on this earth with us. It's just an unspeakable tragedy. I'm thinking of Ty, obviously, to go from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows after winning his championship, and for Joe Gibbs to now have lost his second son in just a matter of a few years, both at the age of 49, far too young. Again, I can't say anything that hasn't already been said or that will bring Coy back or anything like that, but I do just want to give my deepest condolences to the entire family. It's very difficult to process the information, but as you said, Kobe, the show must go on. We have a race today. We're going to talk about it, and to answer the question, I think, it's an advantage that we talk about all the time. I remember them bringing it up when Jeff Gordon won Martinsville in 2015, to have 2 extra weeks trying to, have a walk-off for the ages as he was getting ready for retirement, and have that extra time to prepare for Homestead. But Logano has been able to execute on that. This is the second time now that he's won a championship. And if you think back to 2018, he moved Martin Truex Jr. out of the way for the win at Martinsville, went on to win that championship a few weeks later at Homestead. Now to get this win and have the extra time early in the round of 8 to prepare for the championship race at Phoenix, and he went out and did it again. So I think it's been a massive confidence boost but Joey's been able to capitalize on twice now for each of his championships, and more power to him, more power to that entire 22 team and the Team Penske organization. Well-deserved champions and a great race that they ran today at Phoenix.
Yeah, and for me, I'd also like to touch on what Joe and Ben said. I'm not going to say a lot, though, but I want to send my condolences to the Gibbs family, too. I was telling everyone backstage, I was down in Charlotte and Huntersville, North Carolina, down from Rome, New York, I should say, over the summer, and I had the pleasure of meeting Coach Joe Gibbs and people around the area. He came out from doing an interview, honestly, an awe moment, but I was talking to the gift shop lady who was very close friends with Ty Gibbs, and Mr. Coy Gibbs actually was a carpooled for them going to school and stuff like that. And just to hear her talk about like JD as well as Coy, it's a very unfortunate circumstance. I feel like we're all a little eerie feeling today, just very upsetting. So I want to send my condolences as well to the Gibbs family, just like all of us here at Grid Network. But to answer the question about Joey Logano, I think 100%. That he had this advantage solely because he won. And like looking back at it, I feel like we all overlooked Joey Logano when he was saying stuff along the lines like, oh, we won here, now we can prepare for this car at Phoenix and we're going to go win the championship. He said it today, we're going to go win the championship. And I mean, he did. He simply spoke that into existence. And I think we got to realize that Joey Logano has been doing this for a pretty long time. In fact, started with Joe Gibbs Racing as a kid, and I believe it would have been the K&N East Series. So Joey Logano, I mean, it's a very tough day for him as well. You saw the emotion getting out of the car after mentioning Coy Gibbs as well. But I think definitely the extra time was definitely the advantage for him, while guys like Ross Chastain and Christopher Bell and Chase Elliott had to race week in and week out these past 3 weeks to try to get into that championship. Joey Logano was just chilling. And, I mean, it showed today, a dominant car. There was not a moment I felt like we were in doubt that Joey Logano was going to cross the finish line as a 2022 Cup Series champion. So, yeah, I think the extra time was 100%, especially with these new next-gen cars, to why Joey Logano got it done. I mean, it's a full circle at the end of the day, right? He won the Clash, comes back, wins. If you count the Clash, that's 5 wins this year for Joey Logano. Wins the last race, wins technically the first exhibition race. I think that's a pretty solid year for Penske.
It also comes full circle because Joey Logano is a former Joe Gibbs racing driver, and if a Joe Gibbs racing driver, Christopher Bell, couldn't get the job done, then it was nice to see a former Joe Gibbs racing driver used to be in that building end up taking home this year's championship. And Adam Lemery says that sliced bread gets it done. Congratulations to Joey Logano. And to be honest with you all, it was really hard to enjoy this championship race because of the tragic news with Coy Gibbs. To be honest, I had no idea they were about to come to green, because I was like staring into space, thinking about the news that we just heard, just minutes earlier. They were literally about to take the green flag. And I'm like, oh, I need to start tweeting. It was just that type of day, because this is something, you don't expect. I think a lot of, as Ben was saying, life is really too short. We need to appreciate all the little things. And if you're having a feud with a family member, not getting along, do whatever you can to bury that, and so you don't feel any regrets later on, and tell your family, your friends, that you love them, because you never know when your time on this earth is going to come to an end. And getting back to the question about the 22 team, well deserved championship effort. I do feel like having the extra couple of weeks to prepare certainly gave them an advantage. And yesterday on the pre-race show, I even said that we're probably overlooking Joey Logano, that a lot of people really aren't talking about him. We're focusing on Chase Elliott, who's already won the championship at Phoenix. We're talking about the momentum Ross Chastain had, and Joe Gibbs Racing's experience of coming to the final race and taking home the championship. We thought those were going to be the favorites, and everybody overlooked the confident Joey Logano, who was just very nonchalant, chill, and at the end of the day, that 22 team rose above the rest and defeated everyone else to take home the championship in 2022. And as you mentioned, Matthew, Logano won the first event of 2022, the Busch Light Clash in Los Angeles, in the last race of the season in the Valley of the Sun. 31 career wins now, and he's the first driver to bring multiple championships to Team Penske and NASCAR. This is also the first time Team Penske has won the IndyCar and NASCAR Cup Series Championship in the same year. Where does Logano rank with some of the best NASCAR Cup Series drivers and within Team Penske's all-time greats?
I think when it comes to Team Penske and the all-time greats there, I would say he's starting to get up there, and especially in the NASCAR aspect, he has to be one of the top two when it comes to the accomplishments. Daytona 500 win, 2 Cup Series championships, 31 wins. He is continuing on a great career, and this is a driver when he came to from Joe Gibbs Racing to Team Penske. There were people doubting him. Would he really fit in? Will he really be that great? We know AJ Allmendinger was in the 22. That didn't exactly go too well. Kurt Busch was in that 22. It didn't go too well. Joey Logano has made that his own team. He has really made it to where he is just a big part of that team. To see what he had done today, just a flawless race, calling the race on USRN radio. Even in the restart when he was second and went down to get the lead from Eric Jones, really, I think he is showing he is a good driver in the Cup Series that's going to be around for quite some time. I anticipate he's going to just be getting more and more accomplishments for Team Penske, and that's going to be really huge considering Team Penske, one of the best in motorsports. Like Joey Logano, you got to say he's in one of the best teams in one of the most competitive series, the NASCAR Cup Series. He gets it done. I think he's definitely going to be some potential talk of a Hall of Famer later on in his career.
Yeah, Joe, he's there. I was just looking up. I was surprised that he's already up to 31 wins already. He ties Martin Truex Jr. actually for 28 on the all-time Cup Series win list, and everybody that's ahead of them is either active in the Hall of Fame already or Jimmy Johnson, I guess, who's coming back, and we'll see what happens with his Hall of Fame eligibility and that status. But obviously, he'll be in one day, one way or the other, with the career that he had. But Joey Logano absolutely is a future Hall of Famer. Maybe not first ballot yet, depending on who he ends up on the ballot with. Of course, this will be years and years down the road because he's only in his early 30s. He's got plenty of time to continue to add to his resume, but to already be a multiple-time champion with 30-plus wins in the Cup Series. Then you factor in everything that he did as a teenager in the Busch / well, I guess it would have been Nationwide when he first started, but the Busch East Series and then the Nationwide Series / Xfinity Series, pull that all together. No doubt about his Hall of Fame status. Joey Logano is getting up there when you talk about the all-time greats, the multiple-time champions of the sport, and to think that he still has probably another decade if he wants it, where he can be competitive and win races. He's going to continue to climb up that list for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, I could definitely agree with that. I think Joey Logano leads a long list of guys on the current grid right now who are going to be in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. I think we have seen some of the most amount of talent in this sport in the Cup Series that will be in, I was almost going to say Canton as a joke, but in Charlotte very soon after the careers. But I wanted to share a fun story. I appreciate you guys for letting me. I think I fell in love with the sport as a very young kid watching the cars go around in my little high chair. And one of my first ever experiences came at Adirondack Speedway in Adirondack in New York State. I believe it was my 6th birthday. I believe it was July 30th, 2007. My dad and Uncle Scott and everyone brought me to this NASCAR Grand National race. And there was a couple guys there. Ryan Truex was there. He had a lot of hype around him. A couple other great guys. And there was this young kid, this young 17-year-old kid driving the number 20 for Joe Gibbs Racing, led only 1 lap the entire race. I sat in his car before the race, too, and I thought that was very interesting. Led lap 150 of 150, and little did I know that would be Joey Logano, 2-time NASCAR Cup Series champion. So I guess I can credit the 2-time champion for helping me develop a love for this sport. So I wanted to share that story with you guys because I think it's just fascinating to see now at me being 21 years old. When I was literally just turned 6 years old, I got to witness Joey Logano win, I believe, his 4th race of the season as a 17-year-old kid. And now looking at it as an adult, really, the dominance that Joey Logano has performed really in this sport, and now arguably a NASCAR Hall of Famer, and I got to sit in his car as a 6-year-old kid, so I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, I think definitely I would consider him one of the greatest, especially with Penske, especially in NASCAR.
Thank you for sharing that story, Matthew. Really nice memory there. I'm sure you're gonna have for the rest of your life. And looking at Joey Logano, I have to agree with Ben. I think he's certainly already there as a Hall of Famer. Maybe not first ballot, but who knows? You also brought up another great point, Ben. Joey Logano could race another maybe 10, 11, 12 more years, and think of what he could accomplish. Within the next decade in NASCAR, he may put himself in the conversation for first ballot Hall of Famer, and I think he could certainly roll off maybe one, two, even three more NASCAR championships. I also think Joey Logano doesn't necessarily get the respect that he deserves, and maybe winning the second championship, maybe a third later on. A lot of people will start having more respect for Logano because he's certainly accomplished a lot in this sport. And looking at one of the other championship four competitors, Ross Chastain, he ended up finishing second in the championship. Great effort all season long for Trackhouse, from a disappointing Daytona 500 heart crash in Fontana to the now famous Hell Melon, and 2 cars away from the championship entering the 2022 season. And nobody thought Trackhouse would make it this far, finishing in the championship four, just coming up short of winning a championship. So now entering 2023, do you think Trackhouse is going to be one of the top 3 teams?
To first say that, I think it's just we got to give Ross Chastain credit where it's due. I mean, he came from I believe last place finish at the Daytona 500 to not looking great to becoming literally finishing second in the championship four in his first year with Team Trackhouse. I think that's just a very impressive season, seeing how far he came as a race car driver over the past year. But to answer your question, I still don't think Trackhouse hits the podium for top 3 best teams, simply because we have Hendrick Motorsports, Penske now, who just won the championship, and Joe Gibbs Racing. I think Joe Gibbs Racing is going to take a little bit of a hit, though, obviously losing one of the greatest drivers in the history of the sport, and Kyle Busch, and greatest driver in Toyota for possibly, which it seems like it's going to be Ty Gibbs, but you never know. But I mean, with Trackhouse, they had one of the most impressive seasons. I think a lot of us had that debate. Who's going to be the better second-year team with 2 cars? Is it going to be 2311? Is it going to be Trackhouse Racing? I think we just saw what team had more success, and it's definitely Trackhouse. But I would put them 4th. So they almost at the podium. Like, they're very close. But I think what Justin Marks has done for the sport is just absolutely phenomenal. I think Trackhouse will continue to be successful. I think Daniel Suarez is finally getting that confidence back. I feel like he lost after coming in the Cup, which I felt like was too early, getting rushed out because Carl Edwards retired. Obviously, coming off the Xfinity Series Championship with Joe Gibbs Racing, being thrown into the Cup Series. I think now seeing him win, getting that confidence back, and then seeing Ross Chastain become what it seemed like one of the most hated drivers to the most loved driver, and then depending on how Chase Elliott fans felt today, maybe one of the most hated. Maybe he lost that most popular title that he almost took from Chase Elliott. Not sure about that, but to definitely answer your question, I think Trackhouse will be a top 4 team. I think they'll be 4th, though, because you still have powerhouses with 3 to 4 cars.
Yeah, with the powerhouse teams, I think those occupy the top 3 spots. What Trackhouse, I think, really shows their strength as a 2-car team. They could get it done. They have this different philosophy where they keep saying, why not us? And they just keep going out there and they're running strong. Ross Chastain, phenomenal season. But let's be honest, this is the NASCAR Cup Series. Would we have a year ago, around the same time, said Kyle Larson would have the kind of season he did this year after getting 10 wins? I think Trackhouse, they're not going to be a big surprise to everyone next year because everyone's going to be anticipating them to be up towards the front. I think it's really exciting, though, when you see Trackhouse in their Project 91. They are very creative. I think they're getting a lot of people interested in their team, their philosophy, and I think that's one of their greatest strengths. But overall, just the nature of the Cup Series racing, I think they're going to have a tough road in 2023. One of the big things, watch for that Richard Childress Racing team. I think that could be a big challenge for Trackhouse since they're getting Kyle Busch. And I would not be surprised if 2311 have a rebound. That could be a really interesting battle between those 3 teams with 2 cars each.
Yeah, certainly, Joe. It'll be interesting to see how those teams perform in 2023. and Chase Elliott's championship effort came to an end after spinning into the inside wall on a restart. Chastain, Elliott, and many were cutting a dog leg on the restart like we typically see here at Phoenix. Contact between Chastain and Elliott, it really looked like a racing incident, especially when the championship is on the line. Nobody's going to be lifting. Are you surprised incidents like this doesn't occur more often at Phoenix? Does the dog leg shortcut make the racing product better overall?
Yes and no, if I can take each of those parts right away. I said it, I think, in our chat right when it happened. I am surprised that doesn't happen more often, because you look at them on every restart, they're fanning out, it seems like 6, 7, 8, 9 wide, as some drivers are cutting the dog leg, others aren't. And, I just, when everybody tries to merge back into traffic, because you got to get down to 2, maybe 3 wide going through the corner, I am surprised that it hasn't happened more often. And to take the second part of that, no, I don't think the dog leg shortcut does really much of anything. I think it's a risk for drivers. I think it maybe gets them half a car length. It can be useful if they're in a side-by-side battle or something like that, but it messes up your entry into the corner. You risk damaging your car going down to the flat with a transition from the banking. And I think, like what would an F1 fan look at that, coming from a world of track limits and seeing all these drivers, with 2 laps to go in an overtime restart to determine a championship, like we saw in the truck race and have seen over the years, to see them all just completely shortcut the course. I don't know. It feels kind of gimmicky to me. I know I brought this up when we were talking about Texas. I think Phoenix has kind of been transformed a couple of times the same way. It was a really good racetrack back in its heyday, but I'm not really a fan of what it's turned into now. I see a comment in the chat room from Chrome Diesel here. Good to see you, Chrome Diesel. 4th time in my lifetime, my favorites didn't win the title despite having the best average finish of the season. Jeff Gordon 3 times in 07, 04, 07, and 14. Dan Elliott this season, hate the playoffs. I wasn't going to go there. I was just going to congratulate Joey, but since Chrome Diesel brought it up, I guess I will say a great season by Chase Elliott. It's unfortunate what happened today to him, but he did have the full season championship, if you will, on lockdown for a while by a wide margin. I know some fans are going to say that he kind of dipped a little bit during the playoffs. He did still get that win at Talladega. But I guess I don't really like making that argument too much, though. Anyway, the racing obviously would have been different. Ross Chastain wouldn't have given us that epic move at Martinsville that we've been talking about for the last week. So, I don't know that today is necessarily the day to bring that up. Obviously, we can discuss that in the offseason, and fans can talk about how they're going to react to the championship fight. But as for right now, great season from Chase Elliott. I agree with you. But also great season by Joey Logano, who did everything that he needed to do to win the championship. So as they say, don't hate the player, hate the game. In this case, I would say don't hate the drivers, hate the system that they're all are forced to race under these days.
Yeah, and I'll definitely touch a little bit on that. I follow a lot of different. I like to envision how the season would have turned out if this happened or this system was in place. And I believe the NASCAR playoff system is the only way Joey Logano would have won the championship this year. Because if you look at the championship 4, he had the least amount of top 5s and least amount of top 10s out of them. And I think he was 3rd or 4th in worst average finish. So if this was a full season, just want to point out Chase Elliott would have been the champion. If this was Formula 1, actually, a shout out to Conrad McDowell, who runs a Formula 1 points. He does it for every sport you could possibly imagine. Ross Chastain would have been the champion over Chase Elliott by 10 points. I believe it would have been 260 to 250. And then NASCAR makes it Joey Logano. So that's just a little fun tidbit I like to contribute to the show nonetheless. But to answer the question Kobe initially asked, I think it does surprise me a little bit considering, this track, there are no limits. You can go anywhere from riding the wall to almost hitting the inside wall. I feel like you could do that everywhere, right? But at this track, it's pretty much, what's the word? Legal. It's legal. You can do whatever you want, whatever, and stuff like that. So I think it definitely surprises me. But does it make it better? Not maybe for the fans, but what does it really accomplish besides if you want to do a slide job? I don't know what else that really accomplishes. Because guys dive in, but when you have to brake earlier, you got to turn. Now I'm envisioning, this is on my racing setup for the people at home, so it's kind of funny. I'm envisioning me finishing last in my online league race yesterday at Phoenix. But it doesn't surprise me in the sense when it comes to incidents because these guys are some of the best drivers in the world, and there's a reason why a lot of incidents don't occur, especially at a track like this because of how the maturity level of the drivers are compared to what we saw in the Xfinity race, where there were a few incidents coming into the dogleg, nonetheless, stuff like that. But Yeah, it does surprise me in a sense, but it doesn't at the same time. So I guess I gotta be very I guess objective when it comes to that. So I really don't. I couldn't tell you either or. So that's how I'm gonna answer that question.
Yeah, it's certainly surprising that we don't see a lot of big incidents happen in the adult leg more often, and especially with the type of package they had today. Make passing wasn't impossible today, but certainly NASCAR's going to be making some changes over the offseason to this next gen car, and hopes we can put together a more compelling package on the shorter tracks, and the road courses. But overall, I have to echo what Ben saying. I don't think the dogleg really makes the racing product a lot better. And of course, one heartbreaking moment was the slow pit stop for Christopher Bell. And Bell was applying pressure to Joey Logano until Alex Bowman got spun out by Michael McDowell and brought out the caution. Bell really wanted to get a championship to his Joe Gibbs Racing team, especially on a tragic day like today, but came up short. He said he woke up filled with lots of excitement, but the world came crashing down with the sad news of Coy Gibbs passing away. Do you believe this number 20 team is motivated and on the short list of title favorites entering 2023?
I mean, definitely, right? I mean, I think anytime a driver wins a championship in any series, you got to put them at the top of the list, even if they have like a detrimental collapse at the end of the season. Like, I guess like if Chase Elliott were to win today, I feel like even though his last few weeks weren't that great, pretty much after Talladega, he was not as great as he was in the regular season. Still put him at the top of the list. But a guy like Joey Logano, it's hard to not put him at the top of the list pretty much in any time, whether it's whatever car he's driving, I feel like, whether it's the next gen, whether it's Gen 6, stuff like that. I feel like you definitely put him at the list of the title favorites. And I mean, there's a bunch of guys I feel like who definitely are going to be at the top of the list that we didn't see. Like, I'd be surprised to see the betting odds for Ross Chastain and guys like Christopher Bell as well. See how high they are on that list, despite Ross Chastain. I think if you bet like $10 on him at the start of the season after Daytona, you would win a lot of money. Not the Powerball money that nobody seems to be claiming, but there would be a lot nonetheless. But I think this definitely gives the 22 team of Joey Logano to probably the most momentum. I mean, and definitely being the most motivated. But I don't know. Ty Gibbs said something like yesterday, which I thought was a very fascinating quote. Shout out to Ty Gibbs winning the Xfinity Series Championship. Something about motivation is a weakness, but relentlessness is what something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing. Motivation is a weakness, but relentlessness is what you need. Something along those lines. I feel like Joey Logano, he needs that motivation, but I feel like if he continues to do and perform at that level, like you said, Joey Logano's got a long time left, I feel, in this sport, and I feel like he can carry that momentum championship. But I feel like with this next gen car and everything like that, it's hard to really pick a real favorite. But I think after today, Joey Logano's got to be number one on many people's lists heading into the 2023 season, which starts with the Clash 90 days. So, I mean, if you're technically 3 months away, that's got to be exciting for us motorsports fans.
Well, the short list for 2023, I think, is a very long list at this point. It's very, very early. We just wrapped up 2022. I think there's a whole host of drivers that you could say have a shot at that championship. And of course, we'll know a little bit more in just a few months' time when we get the season started, who's going to have momentum, who's going to take a little bit longer to get up to speed. But then again, this playoff format, resets everything multiple times. So it's very difficult to predict championships in this business nowadays. But in looking at Gibbs, I would say 3 of their 4 drivers could be on that short list. Denny Hamlin obviously had another great season, just missing out on a championship 4 after Ross Chastain pulled that move at Martinsville. Martin Truex Jr. next year could be the last dance for him potentially, maybe not. Of course, those questions were being asked this season. We'll see what his future plans are. We know he's going to be back for 2023. And of course, Christopher Bell to build on this championship 4 season. Ty Gibbs, as great as he's been, I think we all know at least the plan for now has been for him to go into the 18 car to replace Kyle Busch. I think Rick Allen even mentioned on the Xfinity broadcast a couple of times yesterday, but he's moving up. So I think it's now the worst kept secret in the garage area. As incredible as he's been winning an Xfinity championship and winning a bunch of races, it's very, very difficult for a young driver to hop into the Cup Series and just start winning right away. So I think it's going to take him a couple of years to get there. But as for the rest of the entire Joe Gibbs organization, I think they all have to be on your short list heading into next season for a championship.
Well said, Ben. Those Joe Gibbs racing teams and a handful of others as well, considering the amount of parity we've seen this year in the NASCAR Cup Series. I thought it was really interesting when they interviewed Bell after the race. He was essentially, saying like, I really like the group that we have now, and we want to keep that together because sometimes during the off season, if the higher ups within an organization thinks that if we move this person here, we can get better results overall. I'm wondering if that's a plea for Bell, be like, don't change my crew chief, don't change my engineer, whatever. I want to keep this team intact because we think in 2023 we can be back in this position and do a couple of spots higher. So it's certainly going to be interesting to see if Joe Gibbs Racing is going to be moving some people around in 2023. So 2022 NASCAR season's now in the books. 19 different winners. We saw some great races, some great moments, and some not so great moments. A lot of safety concerns regarding this next gen car, and the unfortunate retirement of Kurt Busch from full-time racing after he suffered a concussion at Pocono. And for the first time in a long time, no driver led over 1,000 laps this season, just showing you the incredible parity we've seen in this historic season. Where does 2022 rank as we enter the 75th season of NASCAR next year?
Overall, I'll say it was a positive season. In my opinion, I felt when it comes to this playoff format, I felt this was one of the more better playoff runs we had. We didn't have a lot of the big controversies in years past. We still had intense race, and I think what made the playoffs crazy this year was because of the parity level during the regular season, you didn't have one or two drivers easily advancing into the next round. Chase Elliott was the regular season champion, but in each playoff round, he just seemed to lose a lot of ground and be battling, trying to advance. I think at the end, that was a big advance for Joey Logano. And what I really like with this race, the championship four drivers, they all raced there. We didn't see anybody going there trying to spoil their championships with retaliation from the season. Same all weekend, essentially. I think at the big thing, this car, great racing the mile and a half ovals, some of the best racing we've seen in a long time, the mile and a half ovals, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. The safety aspects, hopefully that new rear clip next year will address that. And overall, for all the teams and drivers, especially the smaller teams, they have to be excited. The parity level, I'm seeing Petty GMS getting the win with Eric Jones at the Southern 500. Other teams have come close, 19 different winners. I have to say this is a very positive season, one of the best probably in the playoff era, in this elimination format era.
Yeah, and first off, I want to apologize about the last question. I think Christopher Bell's team is definitely 100% a contender next year. I answered it like Joey Logano. I think I was talking too much about him. But to answer this question about where does 22 rank as we enter the 75th season, I mean, all the commercials about USA Today saying this is going to be the greatest season ever, unless that was last year. But I really think this is one of the best seasons I think we have ever seen in this sport. And I think it would be the best if we didn't see all the injury concerns with obviously Alex Bowman, Kurt Busch, Cody Ware's wreck, and yes, Ben in the chat. I think it has been both the last 2 years. I think every year they consider it being better. But in terms of what we have seen this season is why I would put it as one of the greatest. I mean, we saw 19 different winners, which ties the record. Almost saw 20 if Ryan Blaney won to pass his teammate, but he didn't. So we saw that. We saw just today, I wanted to point out, Kevin Harvick just broke the NASCAR record for most consecutive top 10 finishes at a racetrack. And that was Phoenix with 19, passes Richard Petty and Dale Earnhardt Sr. for the most all time. That's another pretty impressive thing. We saw there's so many different things I could say right now with no drivers leading 1,000 laps. That's the first time it's happened in a very, very, very long time. Just with this new car developing, seeing how close the teams really can get, seeing drivers have career years going from Ross Chastain being 21st or 20th in points with Chip Ganassi Racing to finishing second with Team Trackhouse, seeing guys like Christopher Bell never make it past the round of 12, finishing third in the championship four. It's just, I think this was one of the best seasons ever, but I think when we look back at it in this 90-day off season, we're going to say, well, the injuries kind of brought that down. Well, I think the races kind of fluctuated too when you think about it. I mean, some days I would go into a Sunday being like, this was one of the best races I have ever seen. And then some Sundays I'd be like, why is this a sport? Why are we racing at Texas? just as an example, obviously. Why are all the tires falling off at Bristol? So I guess this season it was never steady. Like if I point a line across my screen, it was never like this. It was either up here, down here. It was like I felt like there was no in between with this season. So I think this is one of the greatest seasons we've ever seen, but I think there are a lot of factors into why this wouldn't be considered the greatest season ever. But keep in mind, as a 21-year-old, there was a lot of seasons before I even existed. So I can't really comment on all of those, but from my lifetime on this earth, I think this is one of the best seasons I have seen, and I think we have seen as fans.
Well, of course, like you, Matthew, I can't speak to the entire history of how a whole season felt. I still think 92 will forever be the greatest finale ever, even living in this championship war era where they kind of try to recreate that magic every year. And on that note, I feel like I have to say, I think NASCAR really hyped things up quite a bit, obviously off the momentum of Ross Chastain's move at Martinsville going viral. The Phoenix race day, I have to say, like I said, congratulations to Joey Logano on a dominant day, winning a much-deserved championship. But I feel like the race kind of didn't quite live up to the hype. I think Phoenix, as much as they've tried to hype up this event and give them the track a couple of facelifts over the years, from what I hear, the atmosphere of the track is fantastic. But the racing itself, I think a lot of fans are starting to say, okay, it's time to go back to Miami for a championship or move it to a rotating basis every year, like some people have been throwing that idea out there over the years. So we'll see what happens on that front. In terms of the whole season, I think, you hit the nail right on the head there, Matthew. I think we've had some pluses and minuses. The parity has been unbelievable. And I think that's probably the biggest plus that we've seen so far. It's been cool to see so many different winners, cool to see different teams up there competing that we haven't seen in a while. For Eric Jones in particular to put the 43 car back in victory lane at Darlington was pretty cool. 19 different winners. I was thinking, because I was always on this train on this show saying I still don't think we get to 16 winners, and then to open the playoffs with 3 non-playoff drivers and to get to 19, I was thinking, okay, how can we get to 21, 22, 23 if Keselowski wins Talladega, if AJ steals a road course, Blaney and Truex can probably get one. It looked like we were never going to stop adding to it as the playoffs began, and then of course things cooled off a little bit. So that's all been great. The next gen car though is a major concern for me, and I think 2022 in and of itself was not a make or break, but this new era for NASCAR is certainly a make or break, and the new next gen car obviously as well. They have to get those issues ironed out, and it's not just the rear end of the cars, like you were mentioning, Joe. And great to see Alex Bowman back today. I hope he's doing all right because I know he was involved in another accident, and want to send my best to Greg Ives because I know he's stepping down from the crew chief box as well. But we saw it again with Brad Keselowski today. I mean, what on earth is going on with these cars just randomly catching on fire? I thought we had that problem fixed, and it showed up once again today. So there's a lot of concerns with this car. And again, I still think, there's a case to be made that maybe they introduced the car a year or two early. It's crazy to think that they were going to introduce it in 2021 before the pandemic hit. But I think there are still definitely some issues that need to be ironed out. So we'll see what they can do going into 2023. I do think there is some momentum. The schedule has been phenomenal. Credit to NASCAR for trying to bring some new tracks in. I remember when Kentucky was like the only new track that we had for, like a decade and a half on the schedule, and to see the Roval brought in and, bring dirt back to the Cup Series schedule and be trying the street course next year in Chicago. I don't know how well all of those experiments have gone, but credit to them for at least trying and not standing still with the schedule as well. I think that's a major plus. So there are positives and negatives that we can point out. Obviously I'm not a fan of the playoff system. I'm not a fan of a sign falling off of the wall in the infield in the Roval and ruining Kyle Larson's season in many respects. I know he still got the chance to compete for the owner's title today, but I think there's a lot of positive energy and momentum. It's just a matter of putting that in the right place and fixing the issues with an next-gen car. That is the single most important thing that NASCAR needs to be focused on this offseason.
Well said, Ben. I don't really have much to add to everything you guys have said, but it's been quite a phenomenal season, and I would be surprised next year in 2023. An entire off season of development, looking at all the data from this year. I have a feeling we may not see all this parity as in 2023 as we saw this year. And got a comment there from Alan Emery, said to him, it's in your top 10 of seasons based on how long you've been watching. He said 19 different winners this year. That's just incredible. And there's another comment there from Chrome Diesel saying it's been 30 years when the greatest championship battle happened. Gone too soon. Alan Kulwicki and Davey Allison. May they rest in peace. And overall, I thought it was a wonderful year. And what Adam was saying about 19 different winners, if you count the races, that are just exhibition events, you can get more different winners. Ryan Blaney at the Texas All-Star race, then RFK Racing swept the duels with Keselowski and Buescher, taking one apiece. Quite incredible seeing all of those drivers go to victory lane. I think this is a season NASCAR certainly has to be proud of. But as Ben mentioned, going into next year, they have to get this next gen car right. They just have to. That is a top priority, and I have confidence that they're going to be able to make this car safer, so no driver gets hurt, because we need to be going forward with all the technology we have access to. We always need to keep moving forward and being an advocate for safety. We can't take some steps back at all in safety, and I feel like that's something we've done this year, unfortunately.
Absolutely, Kobe. A lot of work to do on the next gen car, but hopefully NASCAR can find the root of some of these issues and improve that going into 2023 and beyond. Also need to iron out the short track and road course package. I know we talked about the intermediates being an improvement. That needs to be improved. I think we've taken a step back there in the quality of racing as well. Well, NASCAR wasn't the only season that ended today. We had the MotoGP Championship and season wrap up as well, and Pecco Bagnaia took the championship by 17 points over Fabio Quartararo. Bagnaia completes a 108-point swing in the point standings from 91 behind to 17 ahead to complete an incredible comeback. It's a big celebration in Italy, as Bagnaia is the first Italian rider to win the championship since Valentino Rossi in 2009. He's also the first Italian to do so on an Italian bike with Ducati, and it's the first Ducati championship since Casey Stoner in 2007. So, Joe, we'll bring you back in here to talk about Pecco. It was a great job with the dramatic comeback. Where do you rank this year's championship as a whole, though, in MotoGP?
Overall, MotoGP season, I think it was one of the better seasons as well. The track product, this year we saw Ducati, they were just dominant. From the factory riders of Jack Miller, Pecco Bagnaia, Nea Bastianini, he got several wins. And VR46, they look great this year. And of course, their Ducati power. So overall, Ducati, they had an upper hand advantage, but we still had a great race this weekend and all year long, and a great points battle. Just when it looked like Fabio Quartararo was going to have it all done, and people were saying it's over for Pecco Bagnaia, he was 91 points behind. What a run to swing the points that drastically, 108 points. And he lost some points. He had a 23-point lead entering this weekend, only left with a 17-point lead. So overall, I would say it was a very good season of MotoGP racing. And as Joshua had mentioned too, almost felt like an end of an era, because we know MotoGP is going to be drastically different next year with a sprint race every round, every weekend, essentially doubling the season. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens. And a comment in the chat room from Dimas: the perfect combination, history records for Ducati and the Italian riders. Dimas, thank you always for tuning in, especially for the MotoGP aspect.
Well, Yamaha had both riders finish in the top 10 today. They're excited to see their season come to an end, I'm sure. Honda, on the other hand, had both riders DNF. Mir will join the Honda Repsol team next season. Joe, which team can gain the most as we head into the offseason here, looking forward to next season?
That's going to be really tricky. I think I'm leaning towards Yamaha just because I feel the combination of Morbidelli and Quartararo are going to help that team really go forward. Honda, Marc Marquez has had a long line of different teammates, and you just can't ride with him. Juan Mir, this year he got hurt. He struggled. He was not the same level like he was in the past. Is he going to be the same as another Marc Marquez teammate to come in, can't live up to Marc Marquez and Honda's expectations? Or can he really deliver and bring Honda to be in a better spot? Honda has just been nothing this last couple of seasons without Marc Marquez full time. They need to get a better bike for all the riders. And that's where I feel like Yamaha is closer to getting that compared to Honda. Because the big thing, Juan Mir, at the end of 2020, I felt very confident he was going to go out and get more race wins. Entering with Honda, I don't have that full confidence in Juan Mir. I feel like he could be mid-pack or towards the front It's just that variable is there with him.
Well, it's the start of a new era with the Pecco Bagnaia Championship. Next season is a new era for MotoGP as well, with 2 races each weekend, a sprint race and Grand Prix race in each round. I know Josh Birch, our colleague, is going to be very busy on that front as well. And plenty of other changes around the corner all throughout the series. Joe, as we end this season, does this feel like the end of an era for MotoGP?
In a way, it does. And it makes me think, too, because MotoGP, they're doing something very drastic from years past. Years past, they had an agreement with F1 they will not race at the same time. Well, now they're changing their schedule where they're more likely going to do that. They're going to have a sprint race on the Saturday of each and every Grand Prix weekend. That's doubling the season length. I think that's just going to be something where if the riders, if the teams, if MotoGP can make that work, I know this may be an unpopular opinion, I think other series are going to start looking at maybe we should do a sprint race. Have it where you have 2 races on the weekend. Great for the fans, particularly on TV, the ticket buyers that buy the multi-day packages. But as we mentioned with NASCAR, drivers saying we need less races. We want more time off. Just the thought that F1 expanding their season, people are saying it's too long. What MotoGP is doing, people are saying it's too long. But if it works, I think it really starts to open a new door for all motorsports to consider, which being a little bit more traditionalist, I say I would prefer just a 1 race. I'm not a huge fan of these sprint races than a Grand Prix, because at the end, how many weekends have we been on the air covering motorsports and we're still not done? We still got 5 races left. And before I throw it to you, Ben, goodbye for Suzuki. This was their last race. Goodbye for Tech 3 KTM, their last race as well. Remy Gardner, and goodbye for Darren Binder. Darren Binder, not exactly the greatest rookie season, but overall, what a MotoGP season. But yeah, it's something else, Ben. I feel motorsports landscape could really change if this works for MotoGP.
I think people would revolt if we had 72 NASCAR Cup Series races with a sprint race every weekend. I think, there are some fans that maybe don't think of the teams and the drivers having to travel and be on the road 38 weeks out of a year, and to go from 36 points paying races to 40. They think that that's not going to be too much of a change. But I think, this is the first time in a long time that I can think of where I'm looking forward. I mean, I guess I'm always looking forward to the offseason, but to be looking forward to it this much, because I'm just exhausted at this point with everything that's happened this year, not just in NASCAR, but in F1 as well. You hear Dominicali talking about 30 races for F1, pushing it as high as 23 and 24 nowadays. I think that's really starting to stretch it on those teams as well. So we'll see how it works for MotoGP, but I've got a feeling a lot of people are going to be like you and me, Joe, and maybe not take too kindly the idea of introducing all these extra sprint races and extra weekends where we have to be on the road. So we'll see how that goes from here. Of course, we got a lot of other series that we cover here on this channel, and Joe will get an update on the entire grid ranking as it stands now, with just a few series remaining to finish out their years at this point.
Yeah, we're down to 3 series: Formula One, Supercars, and World Rally Championship. In total, 5 races remaining in the 2022 grid ranking. Pecco Bagnaia, he secured his spot in the top 10. Top 10 pretty much didn't change really, except for Pecco Bagnaia's score, as well as the scores of Fabio Quartararo. Overall, though, when you look at the full grid ranking, Ross Chastain got around Chase Elliott, 21st position. Now, depending on what happens to Octonic next weekend, which is the last round for World Rally Championship, we could see a NASCAR driver still get in the top 20, especially if we have Charles Leclerc, if he continues to have his struggles, or supercar races towards the bottom end like Chaz Monster's struggle. But overall, look at 29th. Joey Logano all the way down there in 29th spot. Easy to say NASCAR had the most competitive season out of all the grid ranking series, with 19 different winners, and nobody had a consistency level. Ross Chastain, the most consistent out of all of them, but only 21st compared to last year, when Kyle Larson was in the top 5. Ben, starting with you, is this second year of the next-gen car next year, do we see more of the same in the NASCAR Cup Series, or could we see some teams and drivers break through with more wins, consistency, and potentially dominate?
I don't think you'll see 19 different winners, but I think you have a chance of seeing somebody maybe go out and win 10 races like Kyle Larson did in 2021. I do think there will be 1, maybe 2 drivers that really pull ahead and establish themselves even more so than Chase Elliott did in the second half of this season. I think, everybody was trying to learn this next-gen car. He's still trying to learn this next-gen car in its first year. Now that the teams have a year under their belts, I think you might see somebody really hit their stride and pick up on some things that give them a real advantage. Maybe in the first half of the year, maybe in the second half, who knows? But I think you're much more likely to see it in 2023 than you were this year in 2022.
Yeah, and in terms of NASCAR with grid ranking, I don't think, at least with this next-gen car, we're ever going to see a 2017 Martin Truex Jr. season like he did with grid ranking, winning the inaugural one. I don't think we'll see it. I think we're going to have less winners. I definitely don't think 19 drivers are going to win next season. And if you count Keselowski and Blaney, 21 out of the 36 chartered entries. But, however, I do think there's going to be drivers winning more races. I think we're going to see more drivers with 3-4 wins rather than a bunch of them with 1 and 2, and then Chase Elliott and Logano with 5 and 4 to their respective thing. But, yeah, I mean, this next-gen car, I think, in terms of the idea of it, it couldn't have done anything better for the sport, creating that much-needed parity where we didn't see guys like Richard Petty just win every single race. It felt like back then when they had way too many races, in my opinion. NASCAR, I think, found that 36 race, which sometimes I feel like it's too much for these drivers. But there's a reason why they should increase that, kind of like what MotoGP and Formula One can continue to do for some reason, but I feel like that's more than enough for them. But for the next gen, I think we see the same amount of, at least the idea of drivers being closer, but I think there will be, just like Ben said, a couple drivers, probably Joey Logano being one of them, and like taking off to that next step and just winning more than 5 races next season. But I don't think we're going to have a situation where Martin Truex misses the playoffs despite being like 5th or 6th in points at the end of the season because of 16 different winners. Unlikely, but you never know. I mean, we didn't say that about this year. Next thing you know, we have 36 winners next season. All the chartered entries win the race. Obviously, I would never bet money on that. Would never encourage any of you to bet money on that happening. But you got to have some fun with it, right?
It's something else. I feel next year is going to be really interesting. I have to agree. I think we're not going to hit 19 winners. Less winners, I think, in 2023. Who are those drivers going to be? Well, that's the million-dollar question. I would not even attempt to answer that, but definitely going to be really interesting. Of course, next weekend, Formula One and World Rally Championship, their season finale, Formula One in Brazil. And then we only have a few weeks left. And then with that said, a few more one shiny moments.
Yeah. Time for a great one shining moment. There were some interesting moments all throughout the motorsports weekend. Whether it was in Phoenix or in Valencia, Spain. We're gonna go to you first on this one, Joe. What was your great one shining moment on this Championship Sunday race weekend?
I would say my one shining moment has to go to Pecco Bagnaia getting that championship. What an accomplishment and what a comeback from 91 points down to win it by 108 points. Talk about determination and never giving up. We were even here with Joshua saying it looks like it's over. 91-point gap. It's not going to happen. He proved everyone wrong. He really proved what he's worth as a MotoGP rider. And I got to say, he is my one shining moment for such a great season, getting that championship, and so many historic fronts, talented rider on a talented bike, first for Ducati in such a long time, and to have Valentino Rossi there to congratulate him. He was part of Valentino Rossi's Rider Academy. What an effort. Pecco Bagnaia, my great one shining moment.
Well, if you'll forgive me, I'm going to take 2 here, guys. I think Matthew alluded to it earlier in the show, but congratulations to Kevin Harvick. That is an unthinkable record that he was able to pull off. I know Phoenix has always been one of his best tracks, but to have 19 consecutive races where you're in the top 10, where you don't have a part break, or you don't get caught up in somebody else's mess, or your pit crew doesn't send you to the back, or to have anything like that happen, and to be able to maintain a streak like that and break that record. I'm surprised. It was in the back of my mind, I guess, because I knew that he was getting close. Surprised we didn't hear more of that in the pre-race or leading up to this weekend, that Kevin Harvick was going for that record. So congratulations to him. Want to give him a one shining moment there. And I also want to give a one shining moment to Marty Snyder. I know I've been kind of critical of some aspects of the broadcast this year on both Fox and NBC, but Marty was an absolute pro today. I know he was talking on the Peacock post-race show, yet he was just texting with Coy Gibbs last night. And, the two of them were very close, and Marty was an absolute pro today, as he was at Las Vegas a few weeks ago, handling the whole Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson situation with the interview there. NBC's really lucky to have him, and he did a fantastic job given the circumstances and stayed the true professional that he is. I want to congratulate him on that and say a job well done. That's my one shining moment as well. I also want to give my best to Steve Letarte. I know Steve had an emergency appendectomy last night. I know he's resting up and feeling better today. We missed having him on the broadcast today as well. I want to give my well wishes to him and make sure that doesn't get lost in everything else today.
Yeah, and for me, don't apologize, Ben, because I feel like I'm the one on the show who can't clearly grasp the concept of picking one, because I feel like every time I'm asked this question, I feel like I always answer more than one. One thing, I guess, for Kyle Busch to go out with a top 10 last race with Joe Gibbs Racing, last race with M&M's, I think that was an interesting thing. I think a lot of the Toyota guys is another shining moment. You saw Christopher Bell, you saw Bubba Wallace, you saw Ty Gibbs in their respective series have the best seasons of their career. With Toyota development, I think they're going to be taking a step up. But I think for my shining moment of the entire weekend, I know we'll touch on it more over the next couple of days. I think really, I think I got two real ones. Okay, guys, I apologize. I always do this. I really, for the fans at home. Number one is Team Penske getting both the IndyCar Championship and getting the NASCAR Cup Series Championship. That's impressive in itself. And then another one is Zane Smith winning the truck. I think for the whole weekend, that would be my one shining moment. So today with Penske winning, doing that, but it was Zane Smith finishing second 2 years in a row, not knowing where his next ride is, now seemingly being the only Ford truck in the field, which as projections are for next season, finally getting it done for Zane Smith. I think for what he came from, not knowing where his ride is going to be, to being a NASCAR Truck Series champion, that's got to be one of my shining moments. One of my many, never picked one, but.
Yeah, and how about just front row motorsports in general? Who would have pictured, 10, 11, 12 years ago that front row motorsports would be NASCAR champions at any level? Such a remarkable rise, and it's been really impressive seeing what Bob Jenkins has been able to do with this program, whether it's in the NASCAR Cup Series or the NASCAR Truck Series. So big testament to Bob Jenkins for building quite an organization, and we'll see them hopefully improve in the NASCAR Cup Series in the years to come. And my one shining moment is the 2022 season for Team Penske. Roger Penske has done a lot of incredible things and accomplished a lot throughout his career, and it seems like Roger Penske has accomplished just about anything there is in motorsports, and it's really surprising to learn that this is the first time he's won the IndyCar Championship and the NASCAR Cup Series Championship in the same year. All of his drivers found some success. Joe Logano taking home his second Cup Championship. Ryan Blaney, although he didn't win a punch race, ended up winning the All-Star race. Austin Cindric winning the Daytona 500. Big accomplishments there for him. And on the IndyCar side, Will Power, great consistent season he had. And then Joseph Newgarden, Scott McLaughlin, both of those drivers winning races. It's certainly been quite a dream for Roger Penske, and it leaves you wondering what else can he accomplish. Next year, to have the sports car program coming on board with Porsche running them in the World Endurance Championship. They can win some of the greatest endurance races in the world: Rolex 24, 12 hours of Sebring, 6 hours of Watkins Glen, the Petit Le Mans, and also Roger Penske gonna have a chance to go win the 24 hours of Le Mans overall. So Roger Penske has a lot to look forward to in 2023 with that sports car program coming on board, and the championships he won this year, NASCAR and IndyCar. It just adds momentum for the entire Team Penske organization heading into the new year.
Definitely. And one other shining moment from Alan, Joey Logano winning the Cup Series Championship. That is his one shining moment. We want to thank everyone for tuning in. We thank our Patreon subscribers, Columbus Hill, Mark, and Rod, for investing in the Grid Network. You too can invest in the Grid Network through Patreon or buy me a coffee, which Edward, Amber, and Zach have done. And of course, if you want to invest in the stock market, you go check out public.com, use the referral code GRIDnet. Simply go to public.com, download the app, get your account started up, Use the referral code GRIDnet. You get free stock. So start investing with free money and then find your friends, make new friends, and use their tools to learn about investing in the stock market on public.com. Be sure to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch. We live stream on Facebook, LinkedIn even, have opportunities in the Grid Network team. And of course, we'll be on the air much more this week, starting with tomorrow, where Ben will be on the air for Grid Live Encore. They're going to recap the Xfinity Series, Truck Series, ARCA West, busy weekend at Phoenix, and of course, Moto2, Moto3. Then Wednesday, we have Joshua Birch and Kobe Lambs for Grid Tonight. Friday, the Women in Motorsports with myself and Daniel Zeri. And then we'll do this all over again with Grid Live pre-race Saturday and the wrap-up on Sunday. For Matthew Bro, Kobe Lambs from the Podium Finish, and Ben Schneider, I'm Joe San Diego. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the week ahead. Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GRIDNET for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.